everyone, and welcome to In the Living Room on CHRYTV Christ Has Redeemed You. I'm your host, Stephany Lopez, and I'm so happy to have you join us today. Here in the living room, we talk about real life, real issues, and real hope. Today's conversation is one that is deeply important, especially to parents, caregivers, teachers, and anyone who cares about the emotional well being of children. Our guest today is Dr. Stacey N. Brodie-Walker, counseling psychologist and author who has written several books, including one called Simone and the Psychologist. It's a story about anorexia nervosa, which is an eating disorder. Before we begin, let's bow our head and say a short prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for this opportunity to have a conversation that can bring wisdom, understanding, and hope. We pray for every child, every parent, every caregiver, and every family that may be facing emotional or mental health challenges. Give us grace, compassion, and insight as we speak and as we listen. Let this conversation be helpful, healing, and uplifting in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Dr. Stacey Brodie-Walker, welcome to the
Thank
living room.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Let's start off our conversation by introducing yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, as you said, my name is Stacey Brodie-Walker. I'm a counseling psychologist who got her degree from Howard University. This is after going to the University of Miami in Miami, Florida for 6 years, where I got my bachelor's and master's, and then got the PhD at Howard University in Washington, D.C. I like to tell the story that right after I got my degree, I stepped off the stage and on a plane and went right back to Jamaica, where I stayed for the next 16 to 17 years working at the University of West Indies as a lecturer in psychology. I was also the head of the psychology unit there for a while. And then in 2016, I got a sabbatical and I came up here for a year. And I resigned from UE in 2017, and I am still here. Now I have my own private practice where I see children, adolescents, their families. And I also, like you say, write books about children and specifically adolescents and their mental health.
Wow. Now we're talking to a professional here. So I would love for you who are listening to call your friends, call everybody you know who will benefit from this conversation, because you're going to be able to converse with her when we play this video. Dr. Stacey, what first led you to become a counseling psychologist?
Well, it's an interesting story. I always knew that I wanted to work with children. And my mother said to me, you should be a pediatrician, because she saw my love for children too. And I think that's what came off in her mind. That's the idea she had. So I went to school. I went to the University of Miami as a pre-med major so that I could work with children being a pediatrician. And that didn't go well. I found out that I was not very good with the natural sciences. So I went into another direction, and I found out that the social sciences would also lead me in a direction where I could work with children. So I studied psychology, worked mainly with children, did my dissertation on adolescents, and that is how I got where I am. Started out in one direction and took a detour and led me to where I belong, where God wanted me to be.
Exactly. That's where God wants you to be.
Yes.
And what has kept you so passionate to this calling?
Well, I think my entire life I wanted to work with children, specifically adolescents. Even in my practice now, I probably have more adults than I do have adolescents, but I always have a few adolescents. My passion and what I actually did my dissertation on was inner city adolescents. I really like working with that population. I think they're probably the most needy, probably the most underserved, overlooked, and probably one of the most intelligent population, because not only do they have to be academically savvy, but they have to be street savvy.
Oh,
Um, so I just really love working with adolescents.
yes. That is wonderful. That is so purposeful, you know?
Hmm.
That's very purposeful. I think people can always tell when somebody is truly walking into that in their purpose. And you speak about that with so much passion, and we have only just started our
Thank
conversation.
you.
um, Maybe some of the experiences that you have had, for example, working at UE and you getting your degree in the States, going back to Jamaica to teach at UE, and then coming back and now having your own private practice. Just step us a little bit through that movement and your focus.
Okay, well, I think my focus
Hmm.
or my journey started way before I got to Jamaica, because while I was doing my undergrad and my master's, I was always working and
Yeah.
always worked in institutions that would allow me to be and to interact with children and adolescents. Um, so many, I can't even remember
Yeah.
all of the things that I did before I went to Jamaica. But in 2000, I got my degree at Howard, as I mentioned before. And right after the ceremony, like I like to say, I started at UE. And while at UE, and as I said, I've been at UE for 17 years, but while there, it's not just the lecturing. I did lots of things with the government funded programs, created a program where we were working with some of the children in some of the what do you call them, the children homes. Yes, the children homes.
Yes.
A colleague and I created an entire behavioral modification system to help with modifying the kids' behavior. We created a gift store where if they earned certain points, they could go into the store, and the people actually built the store for us. So these things I've been doing forever. Always, even though I was there lecturing, always had my hands into something, specifically in the inner cities of Jamaica, working with adolescents.
You know, this is just a question that is emoting from me right now. But as you speak, I'm thinking, you know, in our different communities, different environments, we find that children are troubled. Parents are giving their children so much weight, and maybe society is putting so much demands on children that I'm not sure if they are aware that these may be causing what you call it, societal problems that is being burdensome to young people today. And that is one of the reasons why we have so many problems in our societies.
Mhm.
I don't know if that demands an answer, but it's something I had to put in there. And I'm going to ask you to tell me something about your books and what inspired you to write them.
My clients inspired me to write my books throughout, and my children. Throughout my books, I grab from clients I've had over the 20 years. I might remember a story, something a parent may have said that will uh, uh, come to memory that I write, that I put in the book while I'm writing. But
Mhm.
first, let me introduce the books, and then I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. My first book
Yes.
is called Nikki and the Psychologist, and this is a story about social anxiety. And just to let you know why I chose social anxiety as my first book, it's because after COVID, or during COVID, I should say, I was getting a lot of clients who I had terminated. They were doing well, terminated them. I got their parents calling me and getting them back into therapy because they had social anxiety, and they didn't know what it was. And after talking to them and diagnosing, we found out that a lot of kids, because of COVID and because of being isolated, when it was time to go back to school, they had lost their social skills and was having a difficult time. They became anxious and was having a difficult time going back to school. So I decided that my first book would be a 15 or 16-year-old who was dealing with social anxiety, who nobody knew about. And my second book is Depression, Jewel and the Psychologist, a story about major depressive disorder. And again, you asked the question, why did I write the books, or what led me to write the books? And I said, my clients, my children. I just, on the back of this book, it starts out when there's a description of the book. And this one says, again, this is the one about major depressive disorder, Jewel and the Psychologist. Children don't get depressed. As a psychologist that works mainly with children and adolescents, I recall giving a parent a diagnosis of depression for her child and being told that her child cannot be depressed because children don't get depressed. This is an actual story of a client I had in Jamaica.
Really? Yes.
A 17-year-old was depressed, and I said to the mom that she was depressed. And, our culture, Jamaican culture, she said, depressed? What does she have to be depressed about? She don't pay any bills. She don't have any responsibility. So there is an idea, part of what you were saying, not only are adolescents suffering with mental health issues, I think that they're being underdiagnosed and misdiagnosed. There's a thought that children are just rude. Why are they behaving in such a way? Again, especially from our culture, who at some point, I give the story about when I told my mom, who is a very Christian woman who I love to death, that I was going to be a psychologist. She was a psychologist, and I dedicated my second book to her, and I wrote this in the book. And I said, yes, mommy, a psychologist. And she said, nobody don't need any psychologist. She said, all people need is a laying of hands, and they'll be better. And, I said, yes, mommy, God can do all sorts of things, but he also put a lot of people on earth to help. So, again, especially with our culture, there's a belief that these kids are not experiencing mental health. It's just them misbehaving or being rude. The third book, my first boy, Christian and the Psychologist, this is a story about attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, ADD or ADHD, very popular. And then the last book, the one you mentioned, is called Simone and the Psychologist, a story about anorexia nervosa. It's an eating disorder. And again, I write what I experience.
Yes.
And I just thought it would be a good idea, as you mentioned, anybody who interact with children, parents, teachers, principals, whomever, to have an idea of what these kids may be experiencing.
I would like you to maybe just go briefly through each book then and give us an idea what are the symptoms to look for when a child is suffering from any of those that you have written about.
Okay. And again, the uniqueness of the book, which I think I can, since I'm the writer.
Is it written for a particular age group of children?
It's written, I would say, from middle school up. Okay. Even though the illustrator, who does such a very good job, bold pictures, yes. And that's the psychologist, and that's Nikki, and that's a psychologist's office, and psychologist represents with her flag. But each book talks, gives you a little background story of who the client is. And as we are introducing the client, we're also talking about some of the symptoms. So yes. Let me, I want to be very specific. With Nikki and the Psychologist, I want to, so in the next session, I'm going to read a little excerpt. So Nikki comes to the psychologist her first session. She's quiet. She's withdrawn. Again, she has social anxiety. So she's not speaking that much. So the psychologist learns from her intake form that Nikki plays soccer. So she tries to build rapport with Nikki by talking about the fact that she too played soccer. So this allows Nikki to open up. So in the next session, Nikki is more interactive with the psychologist and tells her that she does not know what happened or
Wow.
why her attitude or behavior changed. Nikki says, one day I came home from school and I felt like my heart was beating out of my chest. I started feeling weak and dizzy and I became fearful. She also goes on to talk about how it's difficult for her when she is in a crowd. She doesn't like being in a crowd because she thinks people are judging her, and she feels anxious and it's hard for her to talk. So those are some of the symptoms of social anxiety. We
Yeah.
mistakenly think adolescents with social anxiety are shy, but they're not shy. They are anxious about talking. They're anxious about being judged. So they stay to themselves. And there's a whole body, mental, emotional reaction that comes with that. So it's,
Anxiety
yes,
and all that.
yes, they don't like socializing.
So a parent should be aware of that. Is it usually the parent who discovers or the teachers who discover these behaviors? Or
Well,
parents?
it could be both, or neither. Unfortunately, sometimes it's neither.
Yeah.
I recently had a 16-year-old that was sent to me for
Mm-hmm.
a different issue for emotional regulation. But in talking to the young lady, I found out that she had social anxiety.
Yes.
In talking to the young lady, she gave me a story about being in class, and when the teacher takes roll, all the other students says here, 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 and she raises her hand, and the teacher eventually says to her, "Why can't you say here like all the other students?"
Hmm.
But she's not saying here because she's anxious. She has social anxiety, and she thinks that if she says here, then people are going to look at her. And that's probably one of the worst things for persons with social anxiety. They don't like getting attention. They don't like being the last person to walk into the room late because they don't want everybody to turn around and look at them. They won't initiate conversation because they feel like they're being judged. So, sometimes nobody discovers that the child has this mental health issue, and it goes diagnosed.
Undiagnosed.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a problem when they become adults.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Adults who seem withdrawn, who seems like they don't have social skills, they can't talk in public, and yes, it just,
Mhm.
yeah, one big
So
step.
it's a limiting factor.
Yeah, yeah, just like all the other mental health issues if they're not addressed.
Yes. And the other book. What's that other name of the other book?
Yes, the second book, as I mentioned before, is Jewel and the Psychologist, a story about major depressive disorder. One of the other unique things about this book is at the end, I have not only a directory, because I define all the words that I use in the book
But
that
it's
are highlighted.
yeah.
So there's words that are highlighted in the book, and then if you go to the directory, they're all defined. But at the end of the book, we have what's called the definition. A DSM is the diagnostic and statistical manual that psychologists use to diagnose. So it has all the symptoms here. So for major depressive disorder, some of the symptoms include feeling of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness, and hopelessness, angry outbursts, irritability or frustration, even over small matters, loss of interest or pleasure in most or normal activities such as hobbies or sports. This one is the one that we probably should look out for the most. In the book, Jewel, who is a swimmer and spends most of her days swimming, is now no longer interested in swimming and hiding in the locker room and not wanting to go to swimming. So the coach has a talk with her mother and tell her that Jewel is not coming out to practice and not doing the things that she used to do. So that is one of the clear signs that parents should look for. There's also sleep disturbances, which could include insomnia or sleeping too much, tiredness, lack of energy, weight gain, weight loss, anxiety, agitation, restlessness, and it goes on and on. So
Wow.
each of the books give us a definition and symptoms that we should actually look out for.
Wow. Yes. Are these what do you call it? It's chemical imbalance due to chemical imbalances or social, what is it? Is it something that's happening at home that or social pressure or anything like that?
Well, a little bit of everything. I
Everything.
mean, the mental illness may lay dormant in many of us. So, we may have family members, let's just break that down, that we are not aware of, that may have had a mental illness, and we may never experience it. But if there's a social stress, maybe something is happening at home, maybe some kind of trauma outside of the home, and it can lead, these things can lead to the mental illness. Now, you ask about chemical imbalances. A lot of these, like anxiety and the depression and the attention deficit disorder, yes, there is some imbalance. So there's also, in each of the book, with the psychologist, also encourages them to speak to their doctor, speak to a psychiatrist, because a lot of times we work with psychiatrists who will give medication. A lot of parents don't like putting their kids on medication, but I always say, and I'm not a major proponent of medication, but I also see that there's times that it's very necessary and it works.
It does. I think so too. I also think that if we eat the right food, I'm one of those people who believe so much in diet, proper diet. And we may be getting too much of one kind of food and not enough of any of the others, and it could cause an imbalance in our bodies, chemical systems. And the other book.
Yes. So just mention again, Christian and the Psychologist. I'm very proud of my first boy, and this is ADHD.
Yes.
Christian is 16 years old and jumping up in class, talking out of turn, giving jokes in class. The teachers had a parent-teacher meeting with his parents and described some of his behaviors. Parents were a little sad that they missed it, but then they were sent to the psychologist. And again, some of the symptoms of ADHD: display poor listening skill, loses or misplaces items needed to complete activities or tasks, sidetracked easily, forgets daily activities, diminished attention span, difficult waiting turn, can be interrupt others. The hyperactive symptoms include squirms when seated or fidgets with feet and hand, lacks ability to play and engage in leisure activities in a quiet manner, overly talkative, and things like that. And then the last book, the one that you did mention, and I'll show you it in a hardcover because they have both. This is Simone and the Psychologist, and this is about an eating disorder, anorexia nervosa.
And it is in the reverse for me.
Simone is a twin.
She's a twin.
She is a twin.
Oh, okay.
She has a twin sister. These are her parents.
Yes.
And they've noticed that Simone has been playing with her food more than she's eating her food. They've also noticed that after each meal, Simone disappears in the bathroom. Eventually, her parents go upstairs to talk to her, and they see Simone. Simone also wears a lot of baggy clothes in the house, and her mom's like, "Why are you always in the baggy clothes? It's so hot." So they go upstairs to find out what's going on with Simone. They see Simone doing exercise, and her sweatshirt is up, and they notice how thin Simone has gotten. So they take her to a psychologist who diagnosed her with anorexia nervosa. And some of the symptoms that we should, parents, teachers should think about, should be aware of, is restriction of energy intake relative to the requirements, leading to significant low body weight, intense fear of gaining weight, disturbance in the way one body looks, dramatic weight loss, dresses in layers of clothes to hide the weight loss, preoccupied with weight and food and calories, talk a lot about food, make frequent comments about feeling fat, intense fear of gaining weight, denies feeling hungry, and on and on and on. And some of the physical symptoms, because with eating disorder, because persons are not eating, they have physical symptoms such as dizziness, difficulty concentrating, stomach cramps, fainting, feeling cold at times, sleep problems, on and on, dry skin, brittle nails. And if you have the clients who also purge a lot, so they eat and they throw their food up, will have a lot of dental issues. And sometimes it's the dentist that discovers that the child has an eating disorder. So everybody, again, who works with children and adolescents in some capacity should be aware of, mental illness and what children are going through.
Yes. Sometimes when you speak about children, many of us would first look at the schoolyard if there's something happening in the schoolyard, or there's something happening in the home. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
sometimes the pressure can come from the parents,
Of course.
like
Hmm.
like in the nerve with the twin sisters in that anorexia case there.
Hmm.
Maybe one child is doing better than the. I'm looking beyond. You're the psychologist.
Well, we all look beyond
Uh,
we have to when we diagnose, we don't just diagnose out of the air. We have to figure out,
yeah.
what has caused this and how do
Mhm.
we make the changes. And of
Yeah.
course, social environment. I worked in an eating disorder facility
Mhm.
years back, and a lot of the young ladies who were in there, there was a big component of family, what was going on in the family. A lot of them felt that they had to be perfect. There's a
Yes.
lot of perfectionism in eating disorder. I remember having a client who was getting straight A's and thought that she wasn't doing well enough for her family. I don't know what the message she got from them, if they gave her the message or if she perceived the message, but she had a message that the A's weren't good enough. So there's a lot of perfectionism, as I just mentioned, that's behind eating disorders. And yes, so we do incorporate a lot of family therapy and treatment. It has to have
Yeah.
family therapy because we need environments to change.
Yes. That's so true. Too much pressure on the poor young people.
Yes. And in school, unfortunately, I feel things get lost in school because there's so many kids, and
Yeah.
we have to do a curriculum, right? We have to get through the curriculum by a certain time. So I don't think there's opportunities to stop and talk and why are you feeling this way and da da da. So everybody has to be aware.
Yes.
Hmm.
As we speak, I know you have given so much already. Answers for a parent to look forward from a child when a child is suffering, or anybody for that matter. But
Hmm.
when I think about it collectively or cumulatively, I'm thinking, my God, maybe some of the behavioral problems that we see,
Hmm.
some people may misinterpret them for what is their personality.
Yeah. But I
Would,
think
would you would you think so?
Yeah, I think there's a difference between
There's a
personality
difference.
and mental illness because to be diagnosed with a mental illness, there must be impairments.
Yes.
Personality doesn't cause impairments.
Mm-hmm.
So there's usually an impairment in how the person functions at school, so there's going to be some change. Academically, they're not doing as well as before. They're no longer coming out of their rooms. With Simone, she's no longer eating. So that is not a personality. Just like I said earlier
Yes.
when we were talking about Nikki, that
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for social anxiety to be missed because people might say, oh, she's shy. That's just her personality. But being shy does not cause that much mental and emotional pain,
Yes.
right? So I could be shy, but I still can order food at a restaurant, right?
Yes.
Persons with social anxiety, that's one of the hardest things for them to be able to order food for themselves. And you usually hear them saying, order this for me, order that for me, because it's a pain, it's a difficult thing. They just can't do it. It's not that they're trying to be shy or they're trying to pretend that they can't do it. So it's completely different. Yes, you have people who, in terms of personality, they like to be by themselves.
Yeah.
They're not always, they don't walk around with a smile, but they still go to work, they still go to school, they still are able to function. That's
Mhm.
completely different from a person who's dealing with a mood disorder like depression. Persons cannot function. They have a hard time getting up. They don't have a motivation. They can't clean their rooms. They can't do the things. So there's always an impairment, and that's completely different from
That's completed.
personality.
That's so true. That's what I wanted you to say. Because true. That is so true. It's not like you have the schoolyard bully, or you have the child who is giving trouble in classes all the time.
Right.
Or as you said, a child who is hiding away all the time. When these extremes take place, you know that
Yes.
it should not be go unnoticed.
Should not be
Should
overlooked.
not go
Yes. Yes.
overlooked.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Hmm.
What role should schools and the communities play in helping children develop healthy confidence and emotional resilience?
Well, I've been saying this for years, and I don't, it's just me saying it. I don't know if it'll ever get any traction, but I think that every child before they graduate high school should have 6 sessions of therapy.
Mm.
It should be mandated, just like it's mandated that they take PE for how many amounts of credit. They should have 6 sessions of therapy in order to get that diploma. Being able to sit with somebody that is objective, somebody that is confidential, won't take the information that they get from the child and share it with anybody else, but somebody who's objective, that the child trusts, that they can come and talk to about anything. They might not have anything to talk about. They might talk about, can't wait to get to college or da da da, or they may talk about some of the struggles that they're actually having. So I do think we have the responsibility to our young people. I have 2 kids. I encourage them to be in therapy. Just don't talk, even though they tell me everything I think, or they always talking. I want them to have somebody other than me, somebody who's objective, somebody who they don't think is going to judge them, somebody who don't always have the answer that comes with a parent who is trying to guide and things like that. So, I do think that this should be open, mandatory. But go ahead.
In the schools where I am, they have a person they call a counselor.
Guidance counselor?
Guidance counselor. Is not that the role the guidance counselor should play?
Well, unfortunately, the guidance counselors, as far as I know, when I was in school and what happens here, is that they guide the students in the classes that they need to take to graduate. Right.
Oh, that's what they do.
That's what they do.
So now I'm supporting you big time with this suggestion, with this recommendation.
There are school psychologists.
Yes.
Each school does not have, as far as I know, and I don't want to, as far as I know, when my kids were in school, each school does not have their own psychologist. The psychologist may have 5 or 6 schools under them, and they go from school to school. And what they're usually doing is testing for
yes,
what's the word, what's the thing that they're testing?
Competency, call it that.
Competency, or the high one, the I can't remember the name, not the genius thing, but testing for where
yes, brilliance,
right, and things like that. So I don't think what I am talking about, I don't think it's in the schools.
I recommend that completely, because a child will only go to a counselor, whoever it is, if they feel that they need to go there. And they might be embarrassed, as you say too. They might not want to go. So having the courses as compulsory, it should be something that should be available in the schools for every young person.
Right. Yes. And then because it's mandatory, there's no stigma, because everybody has to do it. It's not just Sally and John who's doing it, and everybody knows Sally and John is in therapy, so there's probably something wrong with them. Everybody has to do it, so there's no stigma attached and no pointing the finger. But since we don't have that instituted, to answer your question, I think again, the adults, the parents, the teachers, they have to be vigilant. They have to see the shifts, because there will be a shift. This child, I hear the story all the time. My gosh, she used to be so friendly. She was my child that spoke to everybody. And when she turned certain age, or when this happened, she stopped talking. This is the shift. Something happened. Oh my gosh, she used to be so good, like Jules. She used to be a top swimmer. All of a sudden, she doesn't want to swim anymore. Why? There's the shift. So we have to look out for the shift that happens. Even with ADHD, and ADHD can be diagnosed as early as 6. But what happened from year 1 to 5? They were able to sit down for 15 minutes. They were able to, have a conversation and not be jittery or not moving all the time. What was the shift? When did the shift happen? And again, I think, unfortunately, speaking for our culture, we miss these things because we have an idea that children should be seen and not heard. you're just rude, you need to behave yourself and don't talk back and those kind of things. So I think we're of that mind, so we miss what is happening.
I think now it's in my time when you be seen or not heard. Did you have that in your time too? Be seen or not heard?
Yeah,
Because
I
I
think
think
it's in everybody's time. It's still going on. I mean, we probably do it a little different to the kids now, but we
it's
want them to talk and to have a voice, but we still tell them be respectful and
yes,
all sorts of things. So
yes. I'm
mhm.
going to ask maybe one or two more questions.
Okay.
I am thinking that in a home, sometimes children are severely abused in whatever fashion or the other. And some of these abusive behavior may be the reasons why some of them, the behavior changes.
Of course, definitely, yes,
Yeah.
definitely,
But
yeah.
we need people like you in the schools.
Mhm.
We need more of what you have those people we have recommended.
And then, the abuse, speaking about abuse, I think sometimes we think of abuse and we think about something physical. They're getting hit or they're getting beaten in an excessive way. But there's a lot of abuse, emotional,
Sexual abuse,
mental
emotional
abuse,
abuse. You're no good. You're just
abuse.
like your father,
Right. So, yes,
like your mother.
this will definitely lead to mental health issues. Definitely. There's
Yes.
no, that's trauma. There's no
Yeah.
getting away from that.
Wow.
Yeah, unfortunately. So that's why, professionals are mandated that if they know that a child is being abused, it has to be reported because we have to get them out of that environment. So that's mandated for me. It's mandated for teachers,
Mhm.
anybody who work with children, because yes, it's a direct pipeline into mental health issues.
Definitely.
Yes.
I know that many parents don't know how to start sensitive conversations with a child about their body or their self-image and emotional pain without causing some kind of shame. How would you recommend that they start it as a counselor?
Right. I think it's you have these conversations from the child. You don't wait till they're adolescent because
Mhm.
if you wait till they're adolescents and then you're just starting the conversation, it's going to be
Yes.
difficult because the adolescent now is looking for their own independence. They're getting closer to peers developmentally. They're,
Mhm.
distancing themselves from their parents. So it's not going to be an easy conversation if you're just starting it then. But
Yeah.
most parents are having conversation with their children as early as 3, 4, 5 about um,
Mhm.
not allowing people to touch you, appropriate touch and inappropriate touch, how
Yes.
to love your body and those kind of things. So if you're having those conversation as early as then it's not difficult to have any other conversation as
Mhm.
they get older because you have already created that
Mhm.
standard. Yeah.
Yes.
But again, you have to have the conversations. But here's the thing, if the parent is not comfortable within themselves, not
Mhm.
comfortable with their own sexuality, with their own emotionality, with their own mental health, they cannot have a conversation with anybody else. Interestingly, when I was teaching at UE, one of the classes, well, I did a lot of the classes teaching the students about therapy, but one of the things that we did in one of the classes is that we talked about sex and sexuality
Mhm.
because I needed the students to be comfortable with their own sex and sexuality so that if a child or even an adult came to them to talk about sex and sexuality, that they wouldn't um, have a reaction that would let the client run away, right? They wouldn't have an eye reaction or they wouldn't feel so uncomfortable that the client couldn't talk. So, yeah, we have to first be comfortable with ourselves to have conversations with children. And a lot of parents, unfortunately, again, going back to my culture, there was
Yes.
a lot of conversation with kids about
Mhm.
sex and sexuality. The most you heard was to not have sex, right? Don't
Right.
have sex. And if you're raised in a Christian family, you're told about how that was a sin. So there
Mhm.
was no other conversation other than that. So a person who grows up in that environment and they then have kids, unless they went and got some intervention on their own, they're not going to have conversations with their kids about sex and touch and emotional and mental because they don't have it themselves.
It is so true. It's so true. And I have evidence to that where someone I knew, because they came from a very abusive family, and one also where they had problems with their sexuality and also getting pregnant very early. Their child now became the victim of what they suffered. So this person would always be demanding or cowing down this child, or rebuking this child, or accusing this child of something that the poor child had not even been involved in.
Mm.
So of course it led to low self-esteem in the child. And some of them may even be driven off to do things that they were not even thinking about.
Right, right, yeah.
So, so your final words, what would be your final word to parents with regards to this?
My final words would be open,
Mm-hmm.
listen. If you don't know, ask. And if you don't know, ask a professional who may know. But
Yeah.
also be aware. Be aware of changes.
Mm-hmm.
And please, let's get rid of the mentality that children don't experience mental health issues. Children don't get sad. Children don't have a reason to get sad. Let's have conversations and be open to having conversations and seek professional help.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say is the thing I said in the middle. I really, really believe that every adolescent should have a minimum of 6 therapy sessions in their life. When I went to school, my program, we had to go to therapy. Learning to be psychologists, we had to go to therapy. It was mandated in order to get my master's. I had to do sessions. So why aren't we allowing or mandating that these kids, even if they want to go in there and be quiet because they don't feel they need it and they're not going to say anything, but it's an opportunity. A good therapist will know how to get them to build rapport and be a part of the session. So I do believe it should happen. But for parents, teachers, be vigilant and be open and listen.
And I endorse that. Totally endorse it. I endorse that. There was something that was in my mind that I wanted. Yes. Can you show us the book again and tell us where to contact you? Give us any information that
Okay.
you'd like to share with regards to your location, your contact.
So all books are available on Amazon. You just have to look my name up, Stacey Brodie-Walker, or look up The Psychologist. Again, book 1 is Nikki and the Psychologist. This is about social anxiety. Book 2 is Jewel and the Psychologist. This is about depression, which is a mood disorder.
Yes.
The third one, excuse me, oops, miss.
I think they're going to be upside down. I've seen them in reverse, so I'm not sure how to flip that.
Okay.
But yeah.
The third one is Christian. Christian is ADHD. And the last one, as I mentioned, is Simone. And Simone has the eating disorder, anorexia nervosa. Can find them all, as I said before, on Amazon or even Barnes and Noble. My email is in the name of children, llc@gmail.com. That's the name of my business. You can go onto my website, in the name of children, llc.com. If you want to get in contact with me, we have a client form on the website. If you want to get therapy.
Can you repeat the website name again?
Yes. The name of the business is In the Name of Children.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So the website is In the Name of Children, llc.com. And you can get all the information on there, the phone number, how to get in contact with me. But the phone number is 754-801-9750. I'm located in Florida, and all my sessions are virtual.
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr.
Wilson.
Brodie-Walker.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
You're very
joining me
welcome.
today.
Very
This was very interesting and very enlightening
Thank you.
conversation, and a much needed conversation too.
And thank you for having me.
You're
It was
welcome.
my pleasure.
To everyone watching today, thank you for spending this time with us. Children's feelings matter. Their struggles are real. And with love, support, and understanding and the right help, healing is possible. So let us continue to be more aware of the problems that our young children suffer and listen more to what they have to say. And I want to say to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us in the living room. It was a pleasure having you here. Please like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you again right here in the living room. May God bless you.